Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Luc Solandt, the Principal Specialist of Marine Protected Areas of the Marine Conservation Society. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about blue carbon assets that we have in the marine environment, of particular relevance to the Ts. So the first habitat I'll talk about is seagrass, of which we have 60 worldwide species. In the UK, we have predominantly two species, Zostra marina and Zostra noltii. Zostra noltii is more in your mud flats and shallow intertidal reaches. Let's make it up to about 30% more efficient than richest rainforest habitats. Nutrient absorption capabilities of the blades themselves. They're a nursery habitat for fish. They provide coastal protection by absorbing the energy from wave action. And just to put this into perspective, they're 0.1% of the global marine habitat, but provide 10% of the carbon store. Mostly, actually, interestingly, between the blades themselves, it's within the sediments and the rhizomes, the root systems of these ecosystems that is most important. And perhaps most fascinatingly of all, the rhizomes show how old these systems are, and they can be about 3 to 5 meters deep in some UK seagrass beds. That's a really, really dense, important habitat. They're important for many fish, particularly the literature suggests cod are really important in there. They're really important for cod juveniles. But the sad fact is they've declined by up to 80% in the last 90 years. So we really need to see a recovery of this habitat. A project we're involved in is the Life Remedies project, which is an EU project. We've got it just in time before we Brexited, which will close in 2023. Obviously, we've had a difficult year of putting some of these measures in with COVID. It's a multi-partner project. You can see the project partners at the bottom. Both Natural England and NGO and large membership organisations are involved. We're using seedlings to grow new beds. That's run by the Ocean Conservation Trust. This is an eminently practical method to regenerate these habitats. We're going to use moorings and marker buoys to protect and enhance existing beds, just to show boaters where they are, so they are less inclined to anchor on them. And we're using advanced mooring systems in 5 special areas of conservation run by Natural England. There's a device on the right of the image which shows the simplicity of just simply raising the riser chain off the seabed, so the circular scouring behavior of the riser chain doesn't cause damage to seagrass at low water. So there are very simple solutions to this. And we need to make boaters aware of such solutions and behavior anchoring. So that's what some of our project partners are doing. So we hope to have a major intervention in growing back some of this vastly important habitat over the next 3 to 4 years. Mudflats are extraordinarily rich and important globally. That's 430 teragrams of carbon that they trap in global environments. Now, tera means 12 zeros. So that's billion. So 430 billion grams of carbon is trapped in the surface sediments. It's hard to visualize what that is, but they're essential for salt marsh and seagrass colonization. Again, for coastal defense, their accumulation in areas of tidal reaches are absolutely vital for controlling wave action. The muds themselves obviously are very rich in organic content, and that begets a whole food system, which is important for tidal fish and shellfish. And that food content is important for overwintering birds and the ecosystem with which they rely on. So they're really, really important for our special protection areas around our coast. Salt marsh is kind of like a continuation of the mudflat situation in terms of their importance. And what's really important about understanding of the long-term nature of any sort of remedial or recovery measures we put in place is that these effects grow with time. Our investment becomes more important over the years. So after you've done some sort of salt marsh remediation, it's only going to show the maximum returns in 100 years. By that statistic, it's absolutely amazing how important these habitats are when they are mature. So we need to plan now and manage now with the idea of sea level rise, which is ongoing at the moment. And this is absolutely pertinent for the country, and understanding the country is eroding in the southeast and accreting in the northwest and the west. And there are some papers that suggest, sadly, that if we don't act rapidly, we may lose this habitat from the southeast by 2040. And just to show that there are some areas that are really ahead of the curve in this, the Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority in Kent and Essex has actually closed off an area of the Medway in pink here to the entire human usage, so that it preserves the salt marsh habitat, because it recognises it as a vital nursery for fish stocks. Now, bivalves are another extraordinary organism for locking in carbon. One oyster filters 50 gallons of seawater a day. I can't quite believe that figure. It's extraordinary how important these organisms are at keeping the water body clean. There's been a 95% decline in the habitat of oysters because they create a habitat since the 1850s. There are projects all over the country. And now we need, because we've dredged many of our harbours and shallow inlets and bays where these animals used to be naturally, we need to put oyster cults down on the seabed. That means dead shell matter, so that they can recruit onto something that they recognise as a good habitat within which to settle. And then obviously when they grow, they create this rich, hard habitat in sedimentary layers. And really recently, even I think last week, there was a manual released by the Native Oyster Network on regenerating oyster beds, and those are the links at the bottom. In your area, I was delighted to see in the research for this presentation, you have an offshore wind farm very close to the coast. Now, they're obviously going to provide carbon assets. They're going to strip carbon from the system, and they're going to provide a renewable resource. Now, not only do they have their direct effects, but the indirect effects are really important. They are a carbon straw on the seabed if they aren't trawled. It is difficult for trawlers to go through these arrays. Sadly, some of these arrays have been designed to allow trawlers to go through them, which might have a socioeconomic impact we think favourably about, but actually trawling of the seabed releases carbon from stored reserves in sediments anyway, and there's literature showing more and more that this is a problem, so we need to stop bottom trawling in our wind farms and our marine protected areas. And when you create complexity around the base of wind farm piles, there is often habitat for both fish and invertebrates like crab and lobster. And so the seafloor itself becomes more complex. And therefore, there's more niches because of those arrays of different habitats necessary for the infrastructure of these devices. And quite interestingly, there are new mariculture opportunities from these arrays, because there are people trialing oyster farms and seaweed farms in and around and being connected between these arrays. So we think in the Marine Conservation Society of these as not just for their direct purpose, but their indirect purposes and what they can offer us. And we think the regulatory regime, like in many other areas of what we're discussing today, has to catch up with this to allow for more advanced fisheries, more sustainable fisheries to operate in them that give a return to the carbon problem that we have. And if you want to find out about the direct impacts of doing this sort of work and some of the solutions to it, I'd urge you to contact Morven Robertson of the Blue Marine Foundation. The link is at the bottom, who's developing mariculture within Essex wind farm. So it's something you could do directly on the Tees. And in and around the United Kingdom, I'm sure many of you listening to this know of the REACH network. That's the Restoring Estuarine and Coastal Habitats Network, which is a high-level government and arm's length body network that is very much evolved into a framework to discuss the best methods to deliver on some of these essential habitats and their restoration. So there's a lot of great information out there, and I've been talking to Roger Proudfoot at the Environment Agency about this, but some of you will know better than me about who to contact and how to get involved from the Tees perspective in this network, and to glean from their excellent experience so that you can develop your own techniques more fully. And yeah, the local experts exist. I mean, you know better than me. I've just given an overview of the value of these habitats in terms of their carbon potential. But you will know in terms of your restoration, which might have originally been for wildlife measures, but the carbon assets in relation to this are vastly, perhaps arguably, more important to society than perhaps the wildlife benefits. That's arguable, but we sadly silo the reasons why we create marine protected areas or why we do reserve generation, rather than thinking more holistically about the multiple benefits of such assets. So talk amongst yourselves. So my conclusions, I would say there is a holy trinity of the seagrass, salt marsh and oyster, but the holy trinity plus that you have in your area is also a wind farm. And it can be something very exciting in terms of providing mariculture opportunities that help with carbon assets and recovering carbon assets. Now, also mostly because it's so close to shore, it's something that you could really work on. You have your existing networks, and there is increasing advice, like the report on native oyster recovery that came out just last week. And yeah, I would suggest a really good, advantageous and new initiative could be to develop mariculture in wind farms. So any other, if you want to contact me, we've got our own blue carbon initiative coming out soon. We are involved with the rewilding network, and there is a very good portal on that for a development of projects that are looking at rewilding. And I don't mind how we badge these projects, but salt marsh regeneration, seagrass regeneration, and oyster regeneration is rewilding as much as it is reducing the carbon footprint. So thank you very much. That was a whirlwind tour. And back to the conference facilitators. Thank you.